guess we should begin here. You were both born in St. Petersburg, both trained in Russia before embarking on these very successful international careers. Alexei, where on your journey as a pianist did you first connect with Daniel?
We played together in Germany. We did few concerts playing Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto, and we immediately established our personal and musical contacts and collaboration, which already is lasting for a few years. And I'm very happy about that.
And that was conductor Daniel then, not violist Daniel,
absolutely,
right?
no.
Yeah.
And it happened in a very trivial way. One other soloist has cancelled on me in a very short notice, and I was left without a soloist for Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto, which is notoriously not the easiest of them, and there was quite a few important concerts. So I was looking and thinking, and then just came across some of Alexei's recordings, live recordings of other works, and I reached out, and he was free. And after that, I think we've covered 2 dozens of concertos in terms of repertoire, if not more. And the repertoire is growing. We've done this Beethoven's multiple occasions before, many other, and it's a kind of relationship which has grown from musical to personal and back to musical. It's really. Yeah, I called Alexei among a couple of people that define my artistic DNA, and this is for me wonderful to have him in Winnipeg.
And it is a gift for us too, and with Benjamin Schmidt as well, just a real gift to the city. So Alexei, to catch up listeners, again, you're training in Russia before embarking on this international career, studying in Lake Como, the Geza Anta competition win in 2003, some years ago. From there, you've performed with some of the world's most prestigious orchestras in these prestigious halls, the New York Philharmonic, the London Symphony, the Gewandhaus, and of course the Mariinsky Theater Orchestra. And it is there I think I'd really like to begin this conversation, because it was back in 2014 that you guys performed the Beethoven Concerti together, right?
That's true. We did with Daniel Raiskin, yes, all 5 of them.
Was that the first time the two of you together had done Beethoven?
That's it.
Probably. I don't remember.
No, we've done single concertos here and there, but then Alexei asked me if I was available for a couple of days, and that was really like.
I was very happy, and I was very lucky to have Daniel available for that project, because I had one of those times when I had the privilege to choose a conductor, and of course he was immediately my first choice, and luckily he was available on that date, and so we did it.
And you did all 5 of the concertos.
We did
in
all
one
5,
day.
actually. We did it in one concert with 2 intermissions, but as funny as it sounds, but nobody left the hall. I was looking at the parterre and the balcony. People were still there.
Curious. So if we will survive.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I want to begin, because to me, I'm curious, at the end of that concert, all 5 of the concerti, what was your first feeling? Was it elation? Was it exhaustion?
No, neither. No, actually, in fact, it's difficult to describe in words. After you play Beethoven's music, whether it's sonata or concerto or even 2 concertos, after you finish that, so you have this incredible feeling that something important took place. It's like evening with so much music, so much content to it, so much beauty, so much something important. So it's so almost overwhelming, but also incredible feeling.
And Maestro, what about you? Let us not forget you were on the podium for four and a bit hours.
Not that much.
It's
not that bad. But it's a concerto that started at 7 and ended at 11. And I remember very well, adding to what Alexei said, what happening right after the concert. I remember that he was actually rushing to the railway station to catch the train to Moscow, from which he was flying to Vladivostok, rehearsing Tchaikovsky Fantasy next morning. So this. I can write a book about this. My crazy friend Alexei
Volodin. Doing a couple of recitals in Taiwan after that, and so on.
No, but back to your question. It's an incredible sense of fulfillment. First of all. Of course, we are blessed as conductors with 9 symphonies by Beethoven and much of other orchestral music, but the 5 concertos are such a fundamental repertoire in all of classical music and the history of piano concerto. Just to immerse into all 5 of them during one evening, and to have this wonderful partnership with a soloist you trust and can make music together on a level of chamber music. Even so, I don't have an instrument in my hand, but I feel intricately involved in being part of it. So it's this incredible sense of fulfillment and gratitude for being able to be part of it, and also amazing sense of respect and awe, just being able to do that, and such an artistic level and musicianship. So I was And every time it came up, let's do it again, whether in one evening or in 2 evenings, and let's throw in a
we
choral
did do
fantasy.
this kind of thing often. I mean, to do this kind of marathon, I don't think it's correct, and I don't think it's a good thing to do it on a regular basis. It should be always special event for us, the performers, I believe.
You did it again in Belgrade a couple years later.
We did it in Poland, in Łódź, when I was music director there. We did it in Madrid. Sometimes in one concert, like in Belgrade, sometimes divided over two. In Poland, we did finish with choral fantasy. In Madrid, we did not. But the result stays the same. And I remember I've done a comparable project in 2006 when it was Mendelssohn's 200 years birthday. I've done all 5 symphonies in one evening, shared by 2 orchestras. And you could argue that it's too much, it's overkill, it's not necessary, it becomes sport. Well, first of all, like in sport, you do it because you can, which is an important factor.
Alexei is smiling through this one. Yes,
but I agree. I smile out of pleasure.
It's a complete. And secondly, it's an aim you have. What do you want to? What is a statement? Just to show off, or you try to, together with your audience or with your partner on stage, to live through. Perspectively or retrospectively, whatever you name it, through the development of this genre, whether it's symphonies by Mendelssohn or concertos by Beethoven. And with some other works, it would not work, though we know there have been, and this year alone, there will be multiple projects of having played all Beethoven symphonies in one day, So it's always an argument. Is it important? Is it necessary? But I think in a year, 2050th anniversary of Beethoven's birthday, in a partnership which has proven that it works, and we've done it before, in this context, sharing it over 2 evenings in a city that loves Beethoven, I know for a fact, I think it's the right thing to do. And
You mentioned the Beethoven symphonies, having done the 9 of them, and like the symphonies and the quartets and the piano sonatas, they kind of they're across Beethoven's entire career. He continues to develop them, but the piano concerti come in a relatively concentrated period, right? I think beginning is about 1793, maybe lasting 15, 18 years or something like that. Can we talk about the piano concerti in full, kind of walking through the 5 of them without getting into a dissertation or something too complicated?
Well, this dissertation needs some preparation, actually. But you're right. There is no so-called late Beethoven piano concerto. So he finishes in the so-called middle period. There's number 4, number 5, and also somehow number 3 is also somehow between the early and the middle period. Yes, definitely.
And interestingly enough, it begins with number 2.
It's number 2. Yeah, he wrote. I think he wrote number 2.
He wrote B flat major
the
first,
publishing issues.
It's a Lakewood.
The only interesting thing I would like to add, if you look at the cadenza, special cadenza to Beethoven number 2, is written already in the later periods. I think that's the only kind of late Beethoven feel to it. Also has fugatos, and which is very typical for the late Beethoven. So stylistically reminds a little bit of late piano sonatas, like Sonata Opus 101, something like that. That is interesting. But the concertos themselves were written more in the early period, of course.
But for example, number 3 stands out with very elaborated orchestral writing too. I mean, the first tutti, the introduction of the orchestra alone, and it's the key of C minor that is so significant. About the same period also with Symphony number 3. It's such an extensive introduction, and then also fugato and little fugato in the last movement.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that. This is one of the examples where the relationship between the solo piano content and the orchestra, it's a real concerto in terms of it's always a dialogue, and that's a lot of statement from the orchestra, and slow movements of basically all these concertos are absolute jewels in Beethoven's music crown. I mean, and they're so completely different. The serenity of the 5th concerto slow movement, or this incredible recitative and monologue of the
number 4, the beginning.
Number 4, the sublime beginning.
It's really quite amazing. Or the beginning of the number 4, the
groundbreaking pianist introduction and everything else.
Alone, it's so there is the unmistakable innovation content into the concerti as well, I guess. I mean, and I think also Beethoven pianism somehow within the span of this 15, 17 years that he wrote. I'm not a piano player, but as a grateful listener, I just also acknowledge that it does develop a lot.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, is that this does kind of stem from Beethoven arriving in Vienna and being the pianist composer, kind of doing it all. Do you think about that, Alexei, when you're sitting at the keyboard thinking about the great Beethoven taking a seat at the piano and performing these works for the public, and then how he develops over time in his compositional life before eventually saying, I'm not going to be doing the piano concerti anymore, and he kind of just leaves them aside as he really kind of turns a new page?
Maybe I was thinking about this at one point, but you already kind of explained it, what I was thinking myself a little bit. Yeah, well, definitely. But also, if you think of Beethoven writing 5 works for piano and orchestra, of course, if you look at any composer writing any piece, they always try to find something new in the old form. Somehow it's always same, but it's always a little bit different. So the Beethoven, the progressive composer, expresses himself in each new form he is undertaken, and each symphony is a little bit different. So do all the composers, I think. If you take, for example, Tchaikovsky's symphonies, all of them are different within the symphonic form and so on.
And I guess kind of the second part of that question is, for you as someone who's returned to these piano concerti over and over again, do you find something new each time? Is each time something fresh? Do you hear something different in the orchestra? Is it?
Well, definitely, yes. Of course, also it depends on my aesthetics of the performer. Somehow, as a pianist, whoever violinist, violist, whoever conductor, you have to grow up and always constantly thinking, what are you actually doing in the instrument? And if you're thinking about it, it kind of refreshes your approach every time you play, because you cannot not question yourself what you are doing, because things you were doing 20 years ago somehow naturally don't work anymore right now. You always look for maybe more efficient, more simplistic in a way, but more fulfilling approach. I mean, doing sometimes less, but sometimes more at the same time. I mean, it's difficult to put it in words. So, of course, I find maybe not so much in Beethoven concerto itself, the new. Of course, I know every note of it, but maybe more in myself, in how I want to present this piece to the listener in a more true way, at least what is true to me right now as a performer or as a human being, somehow like that. I mean, yeah, something like
Maestro, do you hear that difference when Alexei takes a seat at the piano and you're performing it in Poland, or if you're performing it in Belgrade? Do you hear those little differences each time?
Oh, absolutely. And I also see it the same way myself when opening the same score, whether it's a symphonic or instrumental work. Yesterday and today morning I was going through the scores again, and there are many markings from past and all not too distant films. I erase and I make something different. I put something different there. It also depends on a partnership with the orchestra, the acousticals, the whole, the atmospheric pressure, whatever.
But sorry for interrupting you, but it always comes from within, from the real musical reason every time, right?
Oh, for sure.
Not because you say to yourself, okay, my interpretational limits don't exist, I'm completely boundless improviser performer, so let me do it completely different just for the sake of being different. No. I myself found this approach a little bit artificial somehow.
For sure.
Egotistical, which is, okay, it's valid as long as you're talented, you can actually surprise and captivate the audience on some superficial level, but I never saw it as my way somehow.
I just think that the process of what we're doing, being stuck with this piece of paper and a black cryptography on it, just inevitably leads that every time you have to decipher it anew, the basic content stays the same, but the final outcome might be every time different, because you do discover during the process of this deciphering new things. It stays cryptography.
This is so true. Everything, all Beethoven's, every composer's indication is relative and symbolic. If for example Beethoven writes crescendo, that means you have to augmentate the volume of sound. But how much do you do that?
Yeah,
it depends. It has to be like true to yourself. Now, how much, let's say, passion or whatever it is, what signifies a crescendo is right now within you. If you do too much and you don't feel that way, it doesn't work.
And it just continues to reveal the beauty and the genius and the mystery in Beethoven's music as well, is that it continues to unfold and develop 250 years after his birth.
And always will.
And it always will.
And there is also this simple sense of should not forget, but that also Beethoven, being a great composer, a great humanist, and great human being, he was a person. He was a mensch. He was a human being. So he was also. We just had a laugh about the history of the fourth concerto being premiered in the evening, talking about the long evenings.
Yeah, it was a big evening.
The same evening with the fifth,
yeah.
sixth symphony, fourth concerto,
Choral fantasy.
and he wanted to impress even more, so he threw in a choral fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy wanted to shine and to be noticed and to be successful, and
And nobody seemed to criticize him for being sportive, right?
no, and and he wanted to earn money too, because this was the reason for these academias, being. So this level of still being human, this is also something very important in Beethoven's music, because we talk about gods and heroes and these supernatural talents and geniuses, but deep inside, these people have the same kind of basic, I don't say in a negative word, trivial, but very common feelings. They are experiencing the same anxieties, whether of love or hate or hunger or sleeplessness, insomnia. And this all comes into their music too, in their own reflective
Yeah, it is
way.
the human condition, isn't it?
That's it.
I want to thank you both so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure having you here in the studio. Have a wonderful performance. Back-to-back nights of Beethoven. What a treat for Winnipeg audiences. I thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
you.